Alrighty. Yeah, so I mean, I know I said I'm a rambler, but yeah, there's quite a lot to talk about. So I guess the main thing that I do is I work with children and young people, and I've done that throughout my career in loads of different settings. But alongside that, I've always kind of done art. But I think like a lot of people that do art, at first it was just kind of a hobby. And then gradually, with a lot of encouragement, like from my husband and other people, I was like, maybe it could be more than a hobby, you know? So I had a few like exhibitions when I mentioned that I've moved around quite a lot. So when I was living in Exeter, which was 20 odd years ago now, I had my first exhibitions. I'll rewind a bit and say, so I studied fine art at uni, fine art and English, mainly because I thought English was a more sensible option rather than just doing fine art. And then when I graduated from uni, I actually went and lived in Hungary for a few years. That's where my husband's from. And I actually, weirdly, after uni, I didn't really do any art for like several years. I was almost like a bit burnt out from doing it really intensively at uni. And I was a bit lost. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So then when we moved back to the UK, I started gradually doing a few bits and bobs again. But mainly I was doing photography at that time, but in a very unprofessional, like I'm not technically a good photographer at all, but I was doing this like weird abstract photography. So I did that and people really liked it, and loads of people were like, oh, you could really do something with this. So gradually I kind of plucked up the courage to have a few exhibitions. I mean, I sold a few pieces. It wasn't like I had massive success in that way, but the response was really positive. So yeah, I was sort of doing that, and then gradually I slowly got back into doing painting, which was always my main thing. And I was doing that. And then when we moved to Manchester, I was like, actually, I'm going to try and almost do it as a job. So I did that, and I would sell my work at like art fairs and anywhere I could exhibit or sell my work, like markets and craft markets and stuff. I was doing that. And then alongside that, because I do work with children and young people, I was getting some like community-based work, like as a community artist as well, like doing projects. I did a big project with Salford Museum. I worked with the local council in Salford and went around schools and stuff because I had that background of working in schools. So that was, I wasn't making a great living, but I was making some money doing that really, and teaching a little bit, teaching art. And then so when I moved to Lincoln, I sort of didn't do anything for a couple of years because I had my son and I was very focused on that. But then I did gradually get back into like teaching art a little bit, and making my own painting was the main thing I did. And then the thing I noticed in Lincoln is I kept meeting artists like at little exhibitions and stuff and being like, oh, I really like your work. It reminds me of so-and-so. Do you know them? And they'd be like, no, not really. And like what I found was that the artists in Lincoln really weren't connected with each other. And like from the time I was in Manchester, that the art scene there was really great in that the artists were all really sharing opportunities with each other, and they were so generous with their time. And they were quite a well-connected group. So I was like, why don't any of the artists in Lincolnshire like talk to each other? It's really weird. So long story short, I, with a couple of other artists, got talking about this idea of setting up this arts organisation called Creative Links, which is still going to this day. We set that up kind of in just after lockdown in like 2021. Sorry, this is way more detail than you need. I'm really sorry. So in like 2021, we set up Creative Links, which was like this kind of community-based arts organisation. It was like anyone could join. It was free. If you were an artist or liked the idea of being an artist, you could join it. And we would have like meetups and put on exhibitions together. And anyway, cut to the end. From that, the core group of people from that ended up setting up an art gallery. Because one of the conversations we kept having over and over again is like, there's not enough places to exhibit our work. There's not enough opportunities. So, so we set up Indigo Crow, the little gallery on Burton Road. which is a space that artists can hire to put on their own shows. We also have a little shop there where the 9 of us that set it up kind of sell prints and cards and stuff. And we also have a little workshop space where we run workshops, which I think is how you found me. Yeah, and the workshops have really taken off big time. Like the 3 strands of the business are all sort of doing well. You know, we need all 3 to make it a viable economic thing, I think. But the workshops we've had such a like positive response to, and we have loads of loyal customers that like book on loads of them and just get a lot of joy out of it. So that, I mean, that's amazing to see. So the sort of very end of the story is just lately, actually. So I've stepped away from the gallery because I've now got this full-time job in a school. But, you know, still very friendly with all of them. It's not like we've fallen out. I am still hoping to do workshops there in the future, but obviously with a full-time job, it's getting the balance right. But yeah, you know, they've actually taken on somebody in my stead. So there's still 9 of them running it. It's run as a cooperative, so everybody puts in an equal amount of like, you know, hours and everything else. And yeah, I mean, it's going from strength to strength. It's amazing to see.
And
so yeah.
The art as self-care workshop, as like, can you explain that one a bit?
Okay, yeah. So that was one of the workshops that I developed to run at the gallery. Just it was something I was interested in. You know, I've always been interested in it, or you know, gradually I've become interested in this idea that art's really good for your mental health. I ran something similar to it actually just as COVID was hitting. I was running, I think I called it like Art for Wellness or something. I was running like a workshop as a regular thing, like a couple of hours a week, twice a month or something in town. And that was just getting going. And then COVID hit and obviously all that stuff stopped. But yeah, it was a workshop I developed for the gallery. So we do it as a whole day thing when I do it at the gallery as like a one-off. I mean, I would love to run it as like a regular club if people were interested in that maybe. But yeah, I want to run it as a one-day thing because that's kind of the format that we have. So it's like 6 hours. The idea behind it is that I try and give people almost like a little toolkit of art activities that they can just pick up when they need them. Because I think a lot of people love the idea of doing art regularly, because I think that's when you get the most benefit out of it, when you're doing it, you know, a few times a week. Like some people really swear by doing it like every day for like 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever. Personally, I'm not really a routine person. So there's plenty of days when I don't do anything. But I think if you can get in that routine of doing a little bit every day, it's really beneficial. So, but I know a lot of people maybe struggle with like, well, what do I do? You know, it's like, you're staring at that blank piece of paper, like, you know, I wouldn't know where to start. Like, what am I supposed to draw? What am I supposed to do? So the stuff that I try and give them is like just a little almost toolkit of approaches or ideas of like starting points and things that you can do if you're uncertain. And then obviously, hopefully, the more you do it, the more, you know, that feeds ideas, and then you're like, oh, I know what to do now. But it's like, that's because you've developed your own art practice and you understand what interests you. But it's like, it's just having that confidence to take that first step. And like me personally, I'm a very abstract painter. I mean, I do some semi-figurative stuff. And my whole art practice has kind of developed around the idea of being very intuitive and not really planning. You know, like I don't know if you study like A-level or GCSE art, that, you know, there's this whole thing of the sketchbook and you like make loads of notes and you do loads of like preliminary drawings. Like my approach to art is absolutely the opposite end of the spectrum to that. And I was taught that way. I had to sort of unlearn it. And the whole way I make art now is I just go for it, basically. I just absolutely just dive in. You know, I mentioned, I don't have a diagnosis. I'm pretty sure I have ADHD. And I think this way of making art just really works for me. I find it very liberating. And it does change. Like sometimes I plan a bit more. Sometimes I start with a very specific idea. But the main thing for me, and the bit that a lot of people, even other artists, find weird, is I start a painting with no clear idea of what it's going to look like at the end. Because to me, that's the joy, is discovering what it's going to become as it goes along. And it's even if I'm like, oh, I'm going to I made this painting that's going to be in the next Lincoln Artists Society show, which was like, I had like an intention. It was about motherhood. And I had sort of done a sketch, so I had a vague idea of what it was going to look like. But then what actually came out in the process ended up looking nothing like, the sketch or like the idea in my head. And that to me is a successful painting, when it's like, oh, I would never have envisaged that at the beginning of the process. So I'm trying to teach this sort of style to the people in this Art for Self-Care workshop, that a lot of them have a very fixed idea of what art should be, and it's quite rigid, and I'm saying, actually, art can be anything. Like, it can literally be like scribbles. It can be just like having fun with the materials. It can be about the process of, it's the journey, not the destination. It's like that kind of approach. So yeah, and we try, obviously this is quite new to a lot of people, and some people are like, oh, I love this, it's so liberating, and then others are like, I don't know if I like it. So you gotta like take people on a journey and maybe lead them by the hand sometimes, but generally the response has been so positive, and I just love teaching art, and I love seeing people like discover that like confidence of like, hey, I can do this. This doesn't have to be hard or complicated. I can give myself permission to just have fun, and that's really powerful. So yeah, I love teaching it. I have to get some more dates in the diary. Yeah.
Is there like actual science behind art as like a form of like wellness, stress?
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's actually, I brought this book along, which in a very ADHD way I still haven't finished reading, but it is amazing. Your Brain on Art, How the Arts Transform Us. So yeah, I mean, in a nerdy way, I've picked out some bits from here, but yeah, like there's loads of research that backs up the idea that it lowers the cortisol, the like stress hormone. Just even like 10 minutes a day of drawing can like lower your basic stress settings. Like it's so good for like kind of making connections in the neural pathways in your brain, all that, yeah, there's more and more, there's like research that suggests that having, again, like that thing of maybe just showing up regularly and even just doing it for like 10 minutes a day is really beneficial. And, and that can look like different things. It doesn't have to be the like crazy stuff that I do. Like some people go the opposite way, and they find like very meticulous, detailed drawing. Like, people would do like architectural drawing of like this building, and they would spend ages like getting every window. I would find that a bit monotonous and I would get frustrated with it. But for some people, it's that like super hyper focus on the detail that is where they reach their like calm Zen state. But for other people like me, it's more about doing something that's quite wild and messy, and then that releases those, and it does it. I think it releases like serotonin into your brain. It lowers your basic stress. Yeah, I mean, and it's also, for me, it was based on like personal experience. Like, I really struggled in lockdown. I found it really tough. I'm quite an anxious person anyway, and just the uncertainty of that time was very difficult for me to deal with. And I was homeschooling my son as well. He came back into my care pretty much full time, so I didn't have much time for art. So I found like I wasn't really doing big pieces. So the thing I did in lockdown, and I'm a massive I'm trying to tell people now about this as a really nice art practice that anyone could do, which is collage. So I just had like a box of like, because I'm a bit of a hoarder as well, just had a box of like bits of paper and, all kinds of stuff I was just collecting randomly. And I just started like, I had all these like little postcard sized pieces of card. And then every day, as my like little downtime, I would do like 2 collages on these small pieces of card. And they're very abstract, sort of similar to my painting. But it was just that process of like selecting the papers I was going to work with. Just, sorting them into piles, and then saying, okay, like for this one, I'm going to use like 10 interesting things that catch my eye. So I sort through, get my 10, and then I was just arranging them, maybe cutting them or tearing them, and then making a nice thing, being like, oh, maybe that bit goes there. And you can spend ages just being like, oh, maybe. And it's just that like, that low stakes, nothing, it doesn't matter at the end of the day, but you're just making a series of decisions and have, you know, your brain's fully engaged, but in a very relaxed way. Like it's just so good for you, I think. And I could almost feel it lowering my stress level as I was doing it. Like it really, that and running, I took up, like I did the couch to 5K, like those two things together just like kept me sane through lockdown, I think. So I don't know if you have a question about this, but you know, the thing about the flow state, which I think is in the little thing that I say about the Art for Self-Care workshop. So that was developed by this psychologist guy. I'm going to show off now. I know how to pronounce his name because he's Hungarian, and I have a Hungarian connection. So he's called Mihai Csikszentmihalyi is his name, weirdly. I think he's actually Canadian, but he has, you know, he's like Hungarian roots. So he wrote this whole book called Flow, and it's not just about art, but it's about this sort of optimal state of concentration, which he calls the flow state. You know, like sports people talk about being in the zone and this kind of thing. And he said, like, yeah, basically the flow state is the state that you enter where things just flow naturally and they make sense, and they sort of, you know, it's a very relaxing state to be in, but it's also like when you probably are going to do your best work and stuff. So yeah, you know, again, this art for self-care, and like what I feel like what I was experiencing doing those collages is you're in this like flow state. And that's, you know, when artists talk about, when musicians and other people like that, when they, you know, they say like, oh, I feel like I didn't do that. Like it just came through me, you know, that's the flow state where you're just like, you're doing something and you surprise yourself and you're like, whoa, that's really good, you know? So, yeah, so that, you know, again, there is some science behind it all, but yeah, so yeah, there is a lot of research being done on this now. I think more and more we acknowledge that we need to, you know, that whole idea of like wellness and well-being, like as things to cultivate, it does work, it is effective. Yeah.
Really interesting.
Oh.
I think you've answered most of my questions. Unless there's anything else you want to add about work, about...
Well, no, I mean, I would just say, like, you know, I really believe that art is for everyone, you know, like, I think it's got this perception that it's like this kind of exclusive club that you're only allowed into if you're good at it. And like, I absolutely, you know, I always say like everybody is an artist. Everybody is, you know, that there's that Picasso quote, which I'm going to probably mangle, about like all children are artists. Like the challenge is to remain an artist as you grow up. Like I really, you know, because I work with kids as well, and I'm always so fascinated to see the way, like, especially really young kids, like they all draw, all of them. And they do it really fearlessly, like they just pick up a pencil and they just go for it. So yeah, I mean, the way I make art is very childlike in a way. But yeah, you know, I just wish that for all adults, really. Like, you know, I think as adults, we lose the ability to be playful in so many ways. And art is a huge arena where you can be very playful and you can just muck about and try stuff. And it's literally for anyone. And, you know, the other thing that's weird about art is like this idea that you have this, like, you're born with the ability to do it or you're not. And that's, again, it's nonsense. Like, it's like anything else. Like, you have to learn to do it and you have to then cultivate it as a practice that you do. And then you get good. It's like a process that you have to go through. And that, you know, because a lot of the people that come on the workshops at Indigo Crow tend to be older people, and I've lost count of the number of them that are like, I always liked art, but I was told that I was no good at it. And I had this one art teacher in college that said my people were dreadful, and I can't draw, and all this, you know. And they somehow, somebody's instilled in them this idea that they couldn't do this thing that they were actually enjoyed. And I just want to like get in a little time machine and go and kick that person in the shin, whoever they were. Like, quite often it was an art teacher, and I'm like, what kind of an art teacher are you? You know, like, because like, I hate that they spent their whole life like not doing this thing that they would have given them so much pleasure, because not one person told them once they were no good at it. Don't listen to those people. Do it anyway, and literally anyone can do it, and anyone can like get the benefit from it. Perfect. There you go, pep talk over.
That's perfect. I think that's all.
Okay, no problem. You're very welcome.